What's going on, guys? Sean here again, doing Commands of Christ, and we've got scripture from Psalms, Old Testament, a bunch of New Testament, a bunch of stuff from Jesus. The commands is rejoice and do not worry, and rejoice comes from when we're being persecuted. Matthew chapter 5 in the Beatitudes, towards the end of the Beatitudes there, he's saying, rejoice if you're persecuted. Be happy, because some of the holiest men that ever lived were persecuted. And that's a sign that you're close to God. And, when you look in the Psalms with David before Jesus came, the relationship with God was very similar. It was a very intimate and close relationship. And when you look in Psalms 1, he starts it off with loving the law of the Lord and having his words inscribed in his heart and mind. And he says that it renews him and refreshes him and it keeps him alive. It's like a plant planted by a river, streams of running water. In other words, his whole existence, his whole sustenance is fueled by the spiritual relationship with God and his word. They work together to keep him strong. And you can see Christ says not to fear. In any situation where he walks up to somebody, do not fear, do not be afraid. Every time an angel, even in the Old Testament, do not be afraid, do not be afraid, do not be afraid. When Jesus is walking up to Peter on the water, do not be afraid. When there's a storm happening, and waves are crashing into the boat, almost flipping the boat over, and Jesus is up in the stern sleeping. He can't figure out what these guys are afraid of. So in the midst of turmoil and just total chaos, he's telling you it's an illusion. It's not real. It is a created drama, and we have the choice of buying into it or letting it pass. And I'm one of the worst with that. I'm very overly dramatic, very sensitive. I get butthurt about a lot of stuff. I feel betrayed. I feel neglected. I feel sometimes like the Lord forgot about me and that he doesn't love me. And that is lies from the enemy trying to convince me my dad doesn't love me, that he's forgotten about me. Somehow he's just left me with nothing. And that's not reality. Reality is there's a cluster of reasons why things happen like they do in my life, and 90% of the time it's usually my fault. But in retrospect, he takes that same mistake and he turns it into a blessing. He takes something where I failed and turns it into success. He uses my mistakes to make me better and bless me. So it's not understanding what he's doing, but trusting that it's good for me, and in the end, it's going to make me more successful, spiritually, physically, emotionally. If you think that God doesn't concern himself with your career and with your family, you're terribly wrong. He's intimately involved. In fact, the more you seek him, the more alive he becomes in your life and anoints the things in your life, removing things that will harm you and allowing for the things to come in to bless you. And in that process, we feel abandoned, we feel betrayed, and we feel alone. But that is a purification process where he's, if you're working a job and you're asking the Lord to bless you because you're not making enough money, and then you lose your job, you're like, what the hell? This is terrible. I didn't pray for that. That's the opposite of what I prayed for. But how is he going to come in? How will you get the other job if you don't leave that one? You know, if you're married to a person that isn't a monster, an absolute total monster, a nutcase, and you're praying for the Lord to give you, a wife or a husband that loves him and that wants a relationship with him and, wants to love and cherish and honor you. Every situation is different. And you go through a divorce, and then you're like, well, what the hell? This isn't what I asked for. Well, if you're praying and asking the Lord, to give you someone that will love you and love him and cherish you, or you're praying for your spouse to get their mind right, and he knows they're not going to do it, he might remove them so he can give you who you need that will lead you further to him in his purpose, in his mission, in his glory. A lot of people may not agree with that. They may not agree with that statement. But I don't think the Lord would have us marry someone that isn't going to get us closer to him. If you're married to a devil and they're leading you away from God, that is no good. That means that you made a choice. That was your pick, your decision. You went over God. You stepped over his authority and you played God and said, this is who I'm going to be with. It's called unequally yoked. He warns you not to do that. Even back in the Old Testament, he says, you don't wander off outside of the camp getting with all these pagans. So, divorce, losing a job, this divorce subject, it's rampant. And the question is, what makes marriage blessed? What makes it honored by God, anointed? What makes it to where he has his hand on it? Is when two people together are true to one another under Jesus Christ. That's a marriage. That is a marriage. And just because you go and you have a priest or a preacher marry you and you have paperwork and documentation that says that you're married, that means nothing. Nothing. Guys, what are we getting married for? What's the purpose? The purpose is a team effort to serve Jesus Christ. That's true marriage. This stuff we got going today, I don't even know what it is. I have no idea. No clue. But that's the thing. I've been through a divorce, and what does that mean? That means God's abandoned me? Well, it felt like it in the beginning. And then, I tell you what, he sent me somebody that, constantly pushes me and inspires me to serve him. And it's the same with your job. In other words, is what you're doing pushing you to Jesus? Are the people that you're associating with, are they pushing you to him? It doesn't matter what the background is or the race or whether or not, are they inspiring you to serve Christ? Are they inspiring you to get closer to him? Because if they're not, he's going to move them out of the way. If you're a child of God, if somebody's influencing you to live the way they're living, he will remove you from that situation. You might lose a friend. You might lose a wife. You might lose a job. You might lose a vehicle. But what you have to understand is he's preparing you for holiness. He's preparing you for great, wonderful things, and pain is a part of that process. There's no two ways about it. You're going to feel some hurt. Especially if you're praying fervently and seriously to him, he hears what you're saying. He's probably answering your prayers, but, maybe it's not getting answered the way you want it to. So he challenges you to rejoice, and he challenges you not to worry, and just trust in him that what he's doing is good, that he has your intention at heart. I'll close with this. You have a son. Your son does something stupid. He knows it was stupid, right? And he expects ramifications for his actions. And he understands he's earned that. He gets it. The biggest thing about it isn't the ramification of the punishment he receives. The biggest problem for that child, if he's a good child, the biggest problem is he let you down. He let you down. He doesn't expect us to be perfect. He doesn't expect us to be flawless because it's impossible. But he wants us to care. And he wants us to have concern for his feelings. If you think that he's not like us, he has feelings. He really has feelings. And he cares so much for us. So deeply. And he wants you to tap into it. He wants you to trust him that when a storm comes, no matter how wild it gets, you just let it go. You let it do what it's got to do. Because when it ends, that sun's going to be shining. I can promise you that. Anyway, guys, you guys be blessed. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening.